my tweet go? Oh Lord Jesus. I hate when you accidentally delete a window that you needed. Give me a second, let me pull up my tweet. Awesome. All right, people. Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa, and I am your humble host, Niko House. Thanks to everybody who have recently become patrons. We've seen an uptick in our Patreon. We're about to be at 300 people. You can help us reach our goal of 500 patrons by donating literally $1. A lot of people have donated $1. Obviously, $5, $10, all of that stuff helps and contributes to the growth of the show and make sure that we can have sustained growth over time so we can continue to keep bringing you the news in a bigger and better fashion. So thank you all thanks to those of you who have recently become patrons. Also, make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure that your notification bell is turned on. Make sure that you're checking back regularly, maybe every 2 to 3 hours, to see if we've uploaded something or see if we're live, because they have not been sending the notifications out like they're supposed to be sending them out. Don't ask me why. I can't tell you at this point. YouTube is seemingly unpredictable, unfortunately. But with that, I know that with your support, we can help get these videos out, and we can help get this information out, and we can make sure that people see this stuff. Now, don't forget, live streams are really important, because I don't keep the live streams up for the entire day. I keep them up for about 2 to 3 hours after the live streams have concluded. And then after that, you only get clips. Now, caveat, I recently decided that if you're a patron, I will provide the full live stream in the Patreon hub, right? So if you go to Patreon and you're a patron, you'll actually be able to see the links in Patreon, but not anywhere else. So if you want to get access to the full live streams whenever you want them, you can become a patron and do that. After that, I'll be posting up clips from the live stream, but not the entire live stream. So with that being said, there's been a recent escalation between, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Iran, Trump, Bolton, Yemen. I mean, same old stuff, right? And one of the reasons I believe that we continue to deal with these issues is because of, in my opinion, what I would call appeals to civility, right? Nobody likes calling people out, because in my humble opinion, I believe it's I don't want to say selfish motive, but it's it's out of political calculation, because you're worried that maybe one day perhaps you might need this person to sign off on a bill for a vote, whatever. But in my opinion, granted, I completely understand how divided amongst party lines our country has become. But at the same time, are we really that divided amongst party lines when 40% of the country is independent now, and a lot of people would be registered as independents if it wouldn't prevent them from voting in either primary in their respective state? I think that when we fail to call out our leaders for being failures as leaders, for perpetuating the deaths of innocent people, not only abroad but here as well, then we're doing a disservice to the people, right? But we're disallowing our constituency from making the autonomous and well-educated decision to either keep somebody in because they're doing a good job, or pushing back and taking that person out of office because they're not doing a good job. So if we paint people as our friends when they're war criminals, right? If we paint them as allies when they're war criminals, when we paint someone as being distinguished and classy when they've been anything and everything but outside of their, pandering rhetoric, then in my opinion, you're doing harm to whatever positive cause, whatever positive change you're trying to create. So, yeah, that's what I feel about that. Now, don't forget, if you have any comments in between any of this episode, you can feel more than free to drop a super chat, and we'll go ahead and get that comment read out loud. So, Tulsi Gabbard seems to understand this better than most. She already called Trump a whole bitch on Twitter. because of his constant willingness to capitulate and parrot Saudi Arabian propaganda and basically do whatever the hell Saudi Arabia tells him to. And Tulsi, once again, quoting an article from The Intercept, is calling these puppets out again. So on Twitter, she said, shameless. Some members of our Congress are acting as the mouthpiece for the theocratic dictatorship of Saudi Arabia, literally, and it's not an exaggeration, reading off a script as the Saudis spend millions to lock up American support for their genocidal war in Yemen and as a push for war with Iran. So the article that she is referring to is calling out one particular Congress member by name. So this article, give me a second. Where'd it go? Oh, give me a second. I think I might have closed it out by accident. So it's an article by The Intercept. And the article is titled GOP Lawmaker Gave Pro-War Speech on Yemen by reading Saudi lobbyists' talking points verbatim. Now, Representative Ed Royce, a senior Republican who, at the time, chaired the Foreign Affairs Committee. Well, that's just grand. That's definitely what we need to make sure that our military-industrial complex and foreign policy is kept in check. Basically, someone who is completely and totally bought off by Saudi Arabia. But let's continue to worry about Russia. I digress. Let's continue. He gave a speech on the House floor in November 2017, imploring his fellow lawmakers to maintain support for Saudi Arabia's the Saudi Arabian-led war in Yemen. Royce warned that foreign adversaries, namely Iran, oh, what a surprise, could gain a foothold in Yemen through Houthi rebels. And this is his quote. Part of the problem is the leaders of the Houthi militia were indoctrinated by Qom in Iran as part of an Iranian attempt to construct a Hezbollah-like proxy in Yemen, warned Royce, suggesting that rebels in Yemen were merely Iranian cutouts, something experts dispute. Wow, it's almost like these lawmakers and these propagandists have run out of plays in their playbook. They need to go ahead and talk to, that coach from Waterboy, Bobby Boucher's coach, that had the magical playbook, and he had a bunch of new plays where he never had to use the same play twice. Because clearly they only got 2 plays. We'll call whenever we need a country and whenever we need a stronghold in a particular nation, like Yemen, right? The reason why is because they're about to try and prepare to go to war with Iran. And to be quite honest with you, it looks like they're trying to start World War III. And I wish I was exaggerating. I wish that was hyperbole, but this is what the signs are showing. It's very similar to the escalations of previous world wars. It looks like they're about to start World War III. Whenever somebody has a stronghold or an oil supply or resources, all of a sudden, a terrorist organization is just right there conveniently. Isn't that crazy? If you were not keeping up the last couple of weeks, they actually tried this logic. They tried to implement that strategy, unsuccessfully so, in Venezuela. They were like, look now, we got to be there. And they were like, because nobody was believing it. No one was believing it. So they said, we got to be there because, I don't know. Hezbollah's there now. Hezbollah is working with Russia to take over Venezuela, and we just have to make sure that can't happen. Bro, that is how uninventive they are. They have no more excuses. They have no other plays in their playbook. And so they're always going to use think about it. They're basically saying we shouldn't get involved in Yemen. We should, as in to protect the Yemeni people. We shouldn't stand up to Saudi Arabia, and we shouldn't remove their funding because Hezbollah is there. So in order to make sure that Hezbollah doesn't take over in Yemen, we should completely carpet bomb the entire country so no one lives there. That way, they can't be co-opted by the Hezbollah terrorism group. That's their logic. And I'm sure there aren't any flaws in that logic whatsoever, right? Let's continue. The inflammatory line had been scripted by a lobbyist for Saudi Arabia. The line where he says that there was a terrorist proxy. It's been scripted directly from a lobbyist in Saudi Arabia. During the 1990s, the leaders of the Houthi militia were indoctrinated in the Iranian city of Qom as part of an Iranian attempt to construct Hezbollah, a Hezbollah-like proxy in Yemen. It says it's a set of lobbyist talking points that were obtained by the Intercept. Royce had received these talking points earlier that day, from a lobbyist retained by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, according to federal disclosure forms, in order to undermine congressional opposition to the Yemen war. Now, the congressional opposition is coming to a head on Thursday. The Senate is scheduled to attempt to override President Trump's veto, which we now know was unsuccessful. And they were going to try to end the U.S. military support for war. Now, the significance of Tulsi calling these people out is that it seems to me like Tulsi is paying attention, right? Why has Barack Obama gotten away with so much? Because while Republicans are making the most ludicrous attacks against Obama, which they're doing on purpose, by the way, simultaneously, the Democrats refuse to call Obama what he is, which is a war criminal. Obama was no ally to the people. I don't care how nice his smile was. I don't care how well spoken he was. I don't care how well he dressed and how well he may have raised his kids. I don't care how funny he is at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The truth of the matter is, Obama was not an ally. Obama was a war criminal who allowed Hillary to get away with unspeakable acts while she was Secretary of State. Very few people would call this what it is, and that's why Obama gets to pretend like he was the most popular president in history. Why did Hillary even have a chance to run as president? Hillary's presidency would have been, Trump's presidency would have looked like nothing compared to what Hillary would have done worldwide. Trump's bad. Hillary would have been worse. And the only thing she was allowed to get as far as she did was civility. We can't call people who have the same D as us out. The reason that Trump is getting away with a lot is because, well, no one wants to critique him in a legitimate way. They want to talk about things like Russiagate. Oh, he's Putin's puppet. No, he's not. All of this stuff directly contradicts any idea that Putin and Trump somehow love each other. And once again, I am actually not opposed to him. I'm not opposed to Trump being engaging in diplomacy with the second most powerful military, if not the first, depending on who you ask, in the world. I'm not really mad about that. I'm never going to be upset about that. I would prefer diplomacy over nuclear war. Is that cool? Okay, thank you. And so now, Tulsi is calling out by name and pointing out Republicans and Democrats because it's necessary to stop the manufacturing of consent, the attempt to manufacture consent that we have seen over and over again. And what we are seeing is, as crazy as it may sound until you put the pieces together, we are seeing an attempt to manufacture consent to go to war with Iran. Israel hates Iran. Saudi Arabia hates Iran. Yemen is next to Iran. The same reason we need to go to war with Afghanistan, because we need a stronghold in Afghanistan to invade, a few of our countries. Afghanistan was not for the oil, it was for the oil that other countries had. You get what I'm saying? How do I know this? Well, few reasons. Let's look at this article by 21st Century Wire. Breaking. Iran announces that it will stop complying with the nuclear deal and plans to resume enrichment. After 1 year of aggressive economic warfare by the Trump administration, followed by unprovoked U.S. military threats against Tehran, this week the Iranian leadership have announced that they are giving Washington 60 days to return to the JCPOA negotiation table, which the U.S. left 1 year ago under the direction of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What a surprise. Trump bending over to Netanyahu once again. President Hassan Rouhani took to national TV and cited the reasons for the Tehran reversal, namely United States violations to the JCPOA deal and failure by its European signatories to compensate Iran for the damage done by Washington, D.C. By taking this tact, Iran hopes to pressure Europe to bring the United States back to the negotiation table in hopes to returning to a healthier negotiation citation than the current U.S. position, which is to impose a full economic embargo on Iran until Washington achieves regime change. You couldn't really put it any simpler than that. Now, expect tensions to increase following this announcement. Only yesterday, the Pentagon deployed the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier strike group and a bomber task force to the Middle East in response to alleged number of troubling and escalatory indications and warning from Iran. A dubious intelligence claim made by war hawk John Bolton. Yes, because John Bolton has always been so honest and forthright. He is honest about one thing. He gonna get that oil. That is one thing that he is honest about. As it turns out, the so-called intelligence was wildly over-exaggerated, as there was never any evidence that Iran was planning to attack the United States forces in the region. Yet another potentially catastrophic blunder. To make matters worse, it appears more likely still that the source of the intelligence, quote unquote, is likely from Israel. It is still unclear to us what the Iranians are trying to do and how they are planning to do it, but it is clear to us that the Iranian temperature is on the rise as a result of the growing U.S. pressure campaign against them, and they're considering retaliating against the United States interest in the Gulf. An official was quoted saying this in the Times of Israel. It goes without saying that the potential for Israel manipulating the White House is as great as any other administration in the United States history. Now, if you want more proof that this entire situation in Yemen and with Saudi Arabia is about Iran, we'll look no further than this article by CNN that was posted, May 2018. Trying to give y'all a quick history lesson. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister told CNN on Wednesday that its country stands ready to build nuclear weapons if Iran restarts its atomic weapons program. Asked what his country would do if Iran starts its nuclear program, Adel Al-Jubeir told CNN's Wolf Blitzer that we will do whatever it takes to protect our people. We have made it clear that if Iran acquires a nuclear capability, we will do anything in our power to do the same. Asked to clarify whether that means the kingdom will acquire its own nuclear capabilities, Al-Jubeir said that's what we mean. He also praised President Donald Trump's announcement on Tuesday that the United States was quitting the Iran deal. We believe the nuclear deal was flawed. Interesting. Like they were looking for, like Saudi Arabia people. I want you to think about this now, right? Remember the tirade that Trump went on because Iran was just walking all over the Iran nuclear deal, and they don't take it seriously. They're da 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 da. You know, Iran, by the way, that did engage in negotiations with the nuclear deal, that, in my opinion, was only conducted, right, so that there was some official piece of paper that the United States could then say, even when it wasn't true, that Iran violated it, so that we can break down negotiations, increase sanctions, implement embargoes, and ultimately commit regime change in Iran. Because you have to have something official in place. You can't break an unofficial law. But in my humble opinion, although of course I'm for peace, I'm all for nuclear denuclearization, but I'm no fool. I'm not naive, and I know why Iran has always been hesitant to denuclearize. Because the United States wants to obliterate Iran off the face of the planet because of their oil supply. I don't know what, but Saudi Arabia literally was responsible for 9/11. Subsequently, was then responsible for the situation in Afghanistan, which cost hundreds of thousands of lives. In Iraq, they're killing millions of people. In Yemen right now as we speak. Who wants to? I mean, there are a few countries that might want to obliterate Saudi Arabia. But when has Saudi Arabia ever been under threat? When has Saudi Arabia ever received an attack of like such a grand scale that it made international news? When has Saudi Arabia ever not been under the nuclear umbrella of the United States, under the economic protection of the United States? And when has Saudi Arabia ever been attacked in such a way? No, excuse me. You know what? The one time that Saudi Arabia was being threatened economically was by Saddam Hussein in Iraq, because he was about to go after the oil fields in Kuwait. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that was. Now, obviously, as you all know, Saudi Arabia was in control of that. So we went to war with Iraq the first time after we actually backed Iraq. We used to support Iraq, in case you didn't know. We went to war with them the first time because Saudi Arabia told us to. Mind you, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like Saudi Arabia has nuclear weapons already. 2, Israel definitely has nuclear weapons. And yet, Israel and Saudi Arabia are constantly and regularly playing victim while they demonize Iran every step of the way. Once again, now if you're curious as to whether or not the United States might have some type of interest in Iran. 1953, President Mossadegh nationalized the Iranian oil supply. This was insane at the time because, well, Iran was basically what Israel is to the United States before that. But the thing is, it wasn't only oil, it was weapons as well. And they were keeping the region kind of in our control, very similar to how Israel is doing now. But when Mossadegh got elected, he nationalized the oil supply. Also wanted to give health care to everybody. You know, all those things that those dirty socialists like to do. The Dulles brothers utilized the CIA to overthrow Mossadegh and take back control of the oil supply. Literally, the headlines after Mossadegh was gone was that oil will once again flow from Iran to the West. Yeah. After they committed a propaganda campaign like which we had never seen in the Middle East, saying he was a Stalin puppet. You know how that goes. Stalinist puppet, communist, dirty commie. And oh, by the way, had one of the largest oil supplies in the world. So around that time, all the way up until 1979, you know, we had installed our dictators and all that good stuff. You know how we do. I don't have to explain that to you. But around that, after 1979, well, Iran got back control of their oil supply. And not only did they get back control of their oil supply, but by 2012, they were the second largest exporter of oil out of the organized petroleum countries. That includes the United States. Isn't that a coincidence? Because I know this might be completely unrelated, people, but like right after that, like in July of 2012, after Iran was the second largest exporter of oil, and then on top of that, what was actually prepping to be the first. They were prepping to be the first. All of a sudden, the nuclear deal became a thing, and then they had harsh international embargoes placed on them by this entity that I'm sure is altruistic and completely objective. This entity called the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council. That I don't know. There's some pretty big names associated with that Security Council. U.S. being one of them. U.S. pretty much writes all of the resolutions for the UN, because you're not even allowed to be a part of the Security Council unless the U.S. approves of it. That's the U.S. Security Council. It ain't really the United Nations Security Council, in case you were curious. So that year that Iran becomes number 2 in the exportation of oil, international embargoes cripple their economy. What a coincidence! The Iran deal gets pushed. Like they had done something wrong. There was nothing that they had done wrong. And then very shortly after that, maybe 2-3 years later, then we heightened sanctions on Iran. We heightened the sanctions on Iran. Guess what? We said they violated the nuclear deal. Well, how did they violate it? They launched a satellite. A satellite. Nothing nuclear. Nothing hinting that they had some type of nuclear capability. They launched a satellite, people. Once again, it had nothing to do with the deal. They were looking for excuses. Trump's an idiot, right? Trump's a moron, because you don't pull, if you want to actually you want to manufacture consent, you have to have the violation of the official paperwork. But if there is no official paperwork, you just look like a idiot who's going on a warpath, which is basically what he looks like anyway. Now, out of curiosity, people, how likely do you think it is that Saudi Arabia has some type of vested interest in Iran not being able to export the most oil in the world? Do you think they might have a little bit? A little bit? Do you think that might sway their judgment, influence their behavior and aggression towards Iran? Just a tad bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Now, considering how hostile the United States and all of its allies become towards Iran the moment, every single time they become dominant in the petroleum industry, do you think that it might behoove them to try and want to prepare in some way, form, or fashion to deal with the day that their number one export becomes a potential source of its demise by the Western powers? You think once again, I'm not a pacifist, but I love peace and I love the potential of peace, but I'm also not naive. The Iran deal was a facade. The Republicans, they get paid to demonize Iran, right? They try to paint them as this, they're super theocratic and it's a dictatorship, it's autocracy, da 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 da. That's not true, but you know what is? You know who it? Listen, y'all. Saudi Arabia is an autocratic, theocratic, hyper right-wing religious dictatorship, and the Republicans have no complaints whatsoever. In fact, Trump seems to love them. But then Trump is constantly wagging his finger at Iran. Bibi Netanyahu always wagging his finger at Iran, but never has anything to say about Saudi Arabia. All of a sudden, we care about violation of international treaties, but Israel violates international law daily without a peep from this administration or administrations in the past. But every single step, everything that Iran does is a problem. Everything that they do. But we can't even give fair coverage to the innocent lives that are taken by the Israeli government. But everything Iran does is a potential threat to the United States. Saudi Arabia talking openly about pursuing nuclear weapons. Trump had nothing to say. Iran did nothing, and Trump pulled out, literally nothing, and Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal, pretending as if he was offended by them doing absolutely nothing. This is why we need these villainous, these abhorrent acts of support of, I don't know what else to call these people, but evil human beings. We need to attach names to that support. There is no need to politically calculate and abdicate judgment, because at the end of the day, nothing gets done if we don't start holding the people accountable. If we don't start people, just by nature, it's harder to be, just for the general public, not for us political junkies, but for the general public, it's harder to be emotionally charged about something that doesn't have a name attached to it. Policies are great, but if AOC backs a policy, then it's all of a sudden amazing. Or it becomes more public. Bernie Sanders backs a policy, it's more public. Trump backs a policy on the other side, it's more public. So that's why I have a great deal of respect for Tulsi, because it seems she understands how the game is played and how it's been able to flourish. Because we want to call verifiable enemies of the people friends in order to politically calculate. We want to call them colleagues. We want to play nice with them, civility and all that good stuff. You think the child who got bombed in Yemen cares about our attempts at civility? Do you think that the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have died in Iran because of poverty? By the way, isn't it coincidence, right? Another country like Venezuela that has a ridiculous amount of oil and for some odd reason is being crippled as far as its economy is concerned, experiencing record numbers of poverty. Right around the time the United States can't keep Iran's name out of its mouth. I'm telling you, maybe there's something to this. Maybe it's just socialism is just that bad. Maybe that's what it is. But dictatorships apparently are good, because Saudi Arabia's business is a booming. Would love to know what your thoughts are about this. Leave a like and a comment. Stephanie, thanks for the super chat. It's for our news kitty treats. I appreciate that, because that man can't eat. That kid can't eat, y'all. I'm telling you. Other than that, like I said, make sure you're checking out the notifications regularly, and make sure that you are constantly looking for the video that we're posting, because YouTube isn't telling you all that I'm live or that I'm posting videos. So you got to check back regularly. Thanks to all patrons once again. This live stream will be up for a couple of hours. After that, it will only be available in Patreon. So if you want to catch the live streams, make sure you become a patron. You can donate as little as $1. Other than that, people, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Tsukasa. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.